So yeah, steroids that's the $1 million question. That's what people ask me all the time. They're like, have you used steroids? Do you use steroids? And I've always tried to be really just straightforward and honest about my experiences, what I've done and haven't done in the past, because I always feel like that's an important piece of who I am. I think everything that is about you, everything you've experienced, goes into who you are as a person, and it allows you to become who you are. So there's and it obviously every decision has ramifications, right? There's consequences. So yes, I've taken steroids. I took the steroids in my, I started at 19, and during my 20s. I took steroids. Now, I'll be clear, not a ton. I wasn't, the bodybuilder side of stuff, because I was always nervous. I remember when people say to me all the time, why did you start doing steroids? You're working out already. I've been working out since I was 14. This is 5 years in. I was in university as my second year, I think. And this guy I knew, he was jacked, he was big. He offered me an oral steroid called Dianabol, and Dianabol's you should never run it by itself. Steroids are like a chemical project or a chemistry project, and in school there's stuff that goes into it, and I didn't know anything. There was no internet, right? There was no internet back then. We didn't know. I didn't know what was what, and I just knew this guy was big. And I think it was $170, and I bought a month of Dianabol, and I take it as pills, and I took it, and it's funny because steroids have become this thing where people don't talk about it. I remember I watched just recently a bodybuilding documentary from like 1988, and all the bodybuilders are talking about how they don't use steroids or barely any steroids, and the steroids only are like 2% of how their physique is created. No. Just no. That stuff's not true. Steroids are real. It's the real deal. I remember the first time I took Dianabol. This is just Dianabol by itself. My bench press, I was 19 years old. I was bench pressing like 200 for like 7 reps. And my bench press went from, in a month, 200 pounds for 7 reps to 245 for like 8 reps. So I jumped more than 45 pounds of strength in 4 weeks. And I felt like $1 million, because every drug, sometimes the drug makes you feel better, sometimes it makes you feel worse. Dianabol made me feel like a champ, like a Superman, like a rock star. Felt good every day. Felt happy. I was upbeat. I felt strong and all that stuff, right? So, I think that's where people talk about the addiction side of steroids and performance enhancers. It's not always just the fact that you're getting bigger. It also can be, and you're getting stronger, and leaner or whatever. It also can be just the feeling, because I started steroids because I was a very underconfident kid, didn't have a lot of friends, wanted to be big and strong, wanted that alpha male thing that I saw in bodybuilding magazines. That's what I was looking for, and it's tough when you're not getting that. Can't find that. It's not there, right? And you don't see a way to do it. And then when someone comes along and says, hey, you can do these pills, and you're going to get there, and you do it, and you do get closer, well, hey, it feels pretty good. So that's the first time. I was 19 years old. In my second year in university, I took Dianabol for a month. I did it again that summer. Again, the results are not as good the second time around. And you can't take Dianabol by itself. That's just not something you do. So, but I didn't know that. And I was kind of nervous to take anything anyway. I don't even drink, right? I was not a drinker in school. I don't like putting substances into my body. But with steroids, I felt like, maybe this is something that's a means to an end. So I took Dynabol then, and then the third time I think I took Anadrol 50, which is another oral steroid, very strong. Got way stronger, way bigger. Made me feel crazy though. I felt like a paranoid person. I was not myself when I did it. Didn't like who I was when I did it. I mean, I didn't even finish the 4 weeks of it. I was like, I'm pretty good. I gave it to a buddy of mine who was taking it too. I was like, you know, you can enjoy it. I won't even charge you for it. Just take it out of my hands, because I didn't like who I became on it. I just got this sort of paranoid grind going on, and I didn't like that part. And then obviously once you've done oral steroids, then the next step up is injectables. And anybody who knows me knows I hate needles. It's not the needle, it's just like the cutting through the skin part that I find like, you know what I mean? So that was my next step up, and my next step in was, you know, I took testosterone cypionate. I remember I went to this guy's dorm room, and you know, you can't really call him a drug dealer because he was kind of selling a little bit on the side. But I went to his room, and he showed me how to inject, how to draw it out of the bottle, how to inject it. I did it. I remember he said to me, "You're a natural." You just did it, and I was just trying to look cool. You know, I wanted to be cool, and again, I was probably 20, I was probably 20 at the time. Remember, it was winter time, so 2021, and it's ironic now, since I have to take an injection every month, or every week rather, that I was good at it, I guess. Maybe. It's weird. In retrospect, looking back on it, it does seem strange. Anyway, and then that was the first time I took an injection of something, which I felt really weird about. I remember walking around campus thinking, you know, it's weird that nobody knows. You know, I felt like everybody should somehow know that I was injecting drugs into my body, which tells you like how uncomfortable I was with it. Because in my 20s, when I was, you know, using steroids on and off, and I mean, I'm not talking huge doses, but I mean, over like 7-8 year period, I used steroids on and off. I never was a guy who could take, you know, I wouldn't stack on. That's what bodybuilders and a lot of people do. They stack on a couple different steroids. I was always too nervous to do that. I would take less than the normal dosage, because I felt like, you know, first off, I didn't have a lot of money. And second off, because I was just nervous about what would happen if I took too much. You know, I thought, oh my God, consequences, what if I get cancer? You know, those things played in my head all the time. So I was nervous about that. So I never took a lot. And as I grew older, I started to realize, you know what, I don't know if I need this. Like, I mean, yes, steroids help a lot. Like when I said, you know, bodybuilders talking about it's a 2% bump. It's not a 2% bump. It's a hell of a lot more than that. Like, you get real strong, really big, really fast. And that's where the being addicted side of it comes in, because you feel like, I can do anything. And I got to a point, I think I accepted myself a little bit more. By the time I got to 30, I'd been training for, you know, 16 years. I started when I was 14 years old. You start to say, okay, there's more to life. I had a kid. At that point, I already had my son. And I just, you know, I was in a different headspace. I started to accept myself. It takes a long time, I think, for people maybe to accept themselves and who they are. It took a long time for me to accept who I was and be comfortable with who I was, and understand who I was not, you know, a bad version or a bad version of anything. It's just who I was. And at that point, I didn't want to take, you know, performance enhancers anymore. And then when I was 34 or 35, I got very, very sick. And I was like tired to the point where you couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. And I know it sounds weird to say it that way, but I actually would walk up a flight of stairs in my house and be exhausted. I need to take a break. I'm 35 years old. Why am I tired? And I remember having hot flashes, like real on hot flashes, pouring sweat, standing in the kitchen for no reason. And I said, okay, something's wrong. And I really, in my mind, I thought that's a thyroid. right? I thought that's a thyroid problem. And then I went to the doctor, did a bunch of blood work, and she comes back and they call me in. And she said, you have low testosterone. And at the time, I hadn't taken steroids in probably 7+ years at that point. And I was like, what? I do everything right. Like, I exercise, I try to sleep. I'm not a great sleeper, but I try to sleep. And I work out, and I eat right. I'm doing everything. I do all the stuff. I check all those boxes. Like, what? How is this possible? And she said, well, it just happens to people sometimes, Devin. Have you ever taken performance enhanced, steroids before? And I'm not proud of my response to that. I told her no. I was embarrassed, And then the frustrating part for me is I've always prided myself on being an honest person and, saying what is there, just being honest with things. And for whatever reason, I just froze. She said it, and I was horrified if they thought I could see me saying it and my doctor saying, what is wrong with you? And me being horribly embarrassed and down on myself. And I don't know. I just don't understand it, honestly. I for whatever reason, I just clammed up, and the first word out of my mouth was no. And I look back on that now, and I think that is ridiculous. But I can still feel that feeling, like in my chest, just a tightness and the thought of, oh my God, I can't say anything. Which is how steroids are for people. Like, it's like the dirty little secret. Nowadays, you can read about it online, and pro bodybuilders are talking about what they're taking. But it wasn't like that then. It really, really wasn't. People didn't talk about taking steroids. Nobody did. Nobody talked about performance enhancers. Nobody said you couldn't look up YouTube back then and say, hey, who's taking drugs? Nobody talked about it. It was like the dirty secret that, was just there, but nobody said it, but we all knew it. Anyway, I had to take testosterone therapy. She said, you're going to have to take testosterone therapy. And I tried gel first. You had to rub it on your forearm, your shoulders and stuff, and your chest. And I hated that. It just gave me crippling headaches every day, horrible headaches. And you can't touch anybody because you don't want to get on them. And I had a little kid, and I was like, or two at that point, 2 little kids. And I'm like, I can't do this. How do I hug my kids? So then she said, well, the other option is taking a pill, or you're going to have to go, get an injection every week. And I said, well, which one is more healthy? And she said, well, the injection is better for you. So I said, all right, I'll do the injection. So she did the first injection. She taught me how to do it myself. And I was, I got the flashbacks to that dorm room. She's teaching me the same stuff. And I remember him saying, you're a natural. I'm thinking, shit, I guess it's good in some ways that I am a natural and I can do this and I know how to do it. And since then, they've tried to take me off testosterone a couple times. Each time, obviously, my own testosterone level doesn't rebound. So, I'll be on that for the rest of my life. Now, I would like to tell you that has nothing to do with the stuff I did back in the 20s. Never, it never happened. That I would guess, if I was going to put money down, I would put money on the fact that, some people can take it something, drink excessively or do drugs or, whatever, and they don't have ramifications. And some people do less and they have more ramifications. I'm that guy that did less than all the other people I knew who in the time who were doing steroids, and I got more. That would be my assumption. I think the likelihood is I screwed up some things in my body. They just didn't really rebound. And now I have to, get an injection every month, or every week rather, to fix that problem. Now, it could have been much, much worse. Let's be honest. I'm lucky. It could have been majorly worse. Listen, an injection once a week is not the end of the world. To be healthy and, not having the problems that I had before, that, how tired I was and sick and exhausted and all those things and the hot flashes. It was definitely, having that injection is not the end of the world. But I'll tell you, having to have the injection every week also is a huge pain. It's just, I mean, I don't like needles, but you have to do it every week. You have to do an injection. That sucks. You have to plan your vacations around making sure you have an injection before you go or after you go, because taking needles through an airport, probably not going to go well, even though, you know, you don't want to have a problem. So you have to plan around that. There's planning involved. You have to go to the drugstore and buy needles. And every time I do, they look at me like I have two heads. They look at me and I can just see the look on their face. They're thinking, this guy does drugs. That part sucks. You know, I've never enjoyed it. I still don't enjoy it. I'm 47 years old. I'll be doing this for the rest of my life, and it still doesn't make me happy. So, you know, was it worth what I did? No. You know, had I just learned more about training, stuck with what I was doing, I probably would be where I am today. You know what I mean? Because steroids don't last forever. They really don't. I mean, you can build a base of muscle, but unless you continue working at it and being smart and eating healthy and all those things, it doesn't last long term. It's like a short-term Band-Aid, right? That's what it is. And I say to people all the time, I don't look down on anybody that wants to do that. That's a personal decision. Just like drinking alcohol, I don't do that. I don't look down on anybody for drinking alcohol. Smoking weed. You want to smoke weed? Fill your boots. None of my business. I don't do it, but that's a choice, a health choice I've made. Taking steroids, you want to do it? Fill your boots. Not something I do now, and not something I would hope, you know, that people understand that it can have ramifications later in life. And those ramifications, while not severe for me, could have been more. And still given an opportunity, if I could rewind and not do that stuff, 100% I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't.